For all your moms, as you leave, there's flowers out on the table outside. Make sure you pick one up, a little gift from the church for you. And just to say our gratitude and appreciation for you. It's always interesting, Mother's Day, it conjures up different things for different people. I read recently in the newspaper of a mother who was arrested because she took her little baby that was just born, still attached to the umbilical cord, and threw it in the trash. It's a terrible story. Terrible story. For some of you, Mother's Day is not a good day. And for a lot of people in our culture, Mother's Day brings up things that are not pleasant and not great to think about. So it's always difficult when you come to a service like this and you come to a Mother's Day, because not everybody is appreciative of their mother or the way they were raised or the way they were treated. And understand if that's the case in which you grew up and that's the situation that you're a part of, then our heart bleeds with you and our heart bleeds for you. For others who are moms, Mother's Day is very difficult. My mom wrestles with it because she's lost one of her kids. And Mother's Day, whenever it rolls around, it's great that we're there, but there's always that lingering thought in the back of the mind of the one who is not there. For some of you, you've maybe lost a baby, you've been through the experience of having lost a child, and you know that pain. No one can feel that pain that you feel unless they've gone through similar circumstances. So when you come to Mother's Day, it's another day that just brings up memories that are very difficult to deal with. For others of you, Mother's Day is just flat out awesome. You love your kids and you're thankful for what God has given you, and it's just a great day. Some of you are new moms and this is your first Mother's Day. Some of you here today, your mom just died and this is your first Mother's Day without her. There's so many different scenarios that we don't tend to think about. We just kind of think about the circumstance that we're in our situation, and really not really pay too much attention to others' Mother's Day. I put this up here. The only thing better than being a mother is being a grandmother. All you grandmothers? And then the only thing better than being a grandmother is being a great-grandmother. I was shopping one time. I was doing some grocery shopping, and I'm walking in front of the store, and I had my first grandchild, and she was with me, and I had her by the hand, and I'm just walking along the sidewalk, and this lady stops me. She goes, "That's your first?" I'm like, "How did you know?" "This could be my child." "No, that's not my child." "That's your grand?" "Yeah, that's my first." She said, this is her response, "You're glowing." So you can always tell grandparents that their first grandchild because they glow, and you know. And that's what she said to me. I'll never forget it. She said, "You think grandkids are great? Wait till you have great grandkids." I'm like, "Lady, I'm not in a hurry to get there. Not yet." And then there was a lady back at Faith where I pastored for a long time, and she and her husband, the most prolific, she had like 40-some great-grandkids, and she had just become recently a great-grandparent, and she said, the only thing better than being a great-grandmother is being a great-great-grandmother. But you got to live a long time to get there. So I'm not sure. Any great-great-grandparents in here today? So you're not so hot, right? Ordinary people. I always think it's funny, you have to live pretty old to be great. But then one day, instantly, in 1 hour, you're great. I think that's great. I thought I'd help out the men here today, too. I thought I'd just share some marriage tips. I like these are on the internet. So guys, I thought I'd just help you out here a little bit as you enter into Mother's Day. Just remember marriage tip number 46. goes like this: your wife won't start an argument with you if you are cleaning. And all the women said, Amen. That's right. That's exactly right. You have never, ever been in an argument when you were washing the dishes. Ever, have you? Or sweeping the floor. Last thing my wife said to me, she left for Maine the other day and to see our grandkids and our daughter. And the last thing she said when she walked out the house, she told me she loved me, she gave me a kiss, and the last thing she said, if you get a chance, sweep the floor. Guess what the first thing she will see when she walks in the house? Whether or not I swept the floor, and she will know. The carpet will tell her so. But wives, I thought I'd just throw something up here just for you to keep in mind, just because it's necessary for you to remember this. If your husband says he'll fix it, he will. You don't need to bug him every 6 months. And all the men said, Amen. Why are you sitting there still, man? You didn't respond to that. All the women said. And if you really want to stay out of another argument, read the instructions before you fix it, right? Just give it a shot. It works. You know that little paper that comes in the package with you know, those are called instructions, guys? Familiar with those? Some marriage tips. I want to talk to you today for a little bit in the time we have about the significance of women in redemptive history. The history of redemption. God redeeming back and buying back mankind and saving us, called redemptive history. Redemptive history is a great study, but I want to just talk to you a little bit today about the significance of women in redemptive history. Let me walk you through some pictures here because beauty is defined by culture. You know that. And I thought I'd throw some different things. That in some cultures is considered beauty. And the more rings they can get on there and stretch that old neck out, the more beautiful it is. That's considered beauty in some cultures. Beauty, again, defined by cultures. Interesting, isn't it? Different cultures, different ways of dressing, and different beauty. That's considered beauty in certain cultures. Interesting, isn't it? Not so much ours, but other cultures, that's considered very beautiful. This more so our culture, beauty defines our culture. That's, now you're getting into the realm of the culture that we live in, right? And that is considered beauty. I think this is as beautiful as it gets. I don't think there's anything more beautiful for me personally than watching my wife nurture and raise our little girls. That's a beautiful picture in any culture, right? For you moms that have experienced that, you know there's something extremely special. There's a bond that develops. My middle daughter just had her second child. She's 39 years of age. She has, at age 39, she has 2 children under the age of 2. She's a tired woman. She's worn out. That's why my wife's up there to give her a little break. But going up and watching that one that was just born a month ago and watching my daughter with her little one and watching that bond, you know that bond that exists when you look them in the eye and they look you back again? That's beautiful in every culture. Because there's nothing like a mother who knows how to nurture a child. Nobody does it like that. Let me throw some religious views at you. Not to get political, but I thought just to be interesting, a nun can be covered from head to toe in order to devote herself to God, right? But if a Muslim girl does the same thing, she is ridiculed by us or oppressed? Interesting thought, isn't it? They do it for religious reasons. Other religions within, quote, Christianity do the same thing. Should we ridicule? No, we shouldn't. Their cultures, their religious systems. But let's kind of pick one of them. Religious views, they're going to the ocean. In our day, we would think that's ridiculous and funny. But in the distant past, it wasn't so different for Christianity. That's how the beach used to look at Ocean City. Can you imagine if you walked on the beach and saw that today? Culture defines beauty, does it not? Isn't that interesting? I always love when I go down to Ocean City, Jersey, going into the one where they make the taffy, and seeing and looking at all the pictures that they have hanging on the wall there of days gone by on the boardwalk at Ocean City. And do you remember, well, probably most of you will remember the day when you went to the boardwalk at night and you dressed up in suits and ties. That's how it used to be. Remember? Did you know that? You didn't know that. Oh goodness, there was a day when you went to the boardwalk at night and you dressed up in a suit and tie. Everybody got dressed up to go out on the boardwalk. Look at the pictures. Go into stores that have the old-fashioned pictures, or go on the internet, Google it. Just the boardwalk in the 30s and 40s. But I want to ask the question this morning, how does God view women? Because different religious systems view them differently. At the end of the day, how does God view women? What does the Bible say about women? It's an important question, especially important in our day. Because one of the things that we're wrestling with in our day is called gender confusion, right? You're watching the news. You're seeing all these boys that feel like they're now women and going over and competing in wrestling and track and field and breaking all the records. Remember, you're watching this going on? It's interesting what's taking place in our society. Bathrooms. It's going to be difficult to even have men's and ladies' bathrooms in the future. I was reading that in schools, when they're putting in bathrooms now in new buildings, just one bathroom, single. There's no men's room, there's no women's room. There's just a bathroom for one person to go in one at a time. Gender confusion is entering into our culture, but just realize this: the further you get away from God, the more confusion there is. God the closer you get to God, the more He clears up that confusion. And it adds to the issue today that we face, and they're there. My grandkids, like some of your grandkids, go to school, and this is becoming the norm for them. This is not the norm for somebody my age, but for my 13-year-old granddaughter who's in school, this is becoming the norm. Gender confusion is a part of the culture in which she lives, and it's not going to go away. And we as believers have to be able to respond to such a culture in a biblical and proper and loving, compassionate way. Because for them, the closer they get to God, the more the confusion is cleared up. And our society has drifted so far that we're not sure whether we're men or women. One of the things that's taking place today that I think has to be reversed, and we're not going to reverse it in culture, but we need to reverse it in churches like this church, is this. This is called the feminization of boys is taking place today. We need men to be men, and we need women to be women, and the reason is because that's how God designed it. Every kid that's born needs a dad who understands what being a dad is, and every child that's born needs a mom who understands what it means to be a woman. And if we don't, it does create confusion. So, Genesis chapter 3, verse 15 is where we want to focus today. If you want to turn there in your Bible, I'll put it up on the screen, or there's a Bible in the pew you can have. If you don't have a Bible, you're welcome to take that. Here's what it says. I will put enmity. All right, we can say it this way. I will put conflict. I will put turmoil. I will put hostility between you, and he's speaking here to Satan, between you and the woman. So when this verse says this, I will put hostility between Satan and the woman. Interesting, not the man, huh? Not the man. The woman. He specifically identifies the definite article, woman. And he said, as it goes on, this is God speaking, he says, and I will put enmity between your offspring and her offspring. And then he says, her offspring shall bruise your head, Satan, and you will bruise his heel. Jesus. This is one of the greatest verses in the Bible. This is in Genesis chapter 3. What God does is God here says, this is the course of history. This is how it's going to play out. This is a very prophetic verse that gives us what is considered to be the redemptive plan that God is going to unfold over the course of human history. Years in advance, before any of this took place, God wrote it down in Scripture and said, this is what is going to take place. So I always like to do this. Prophecy is one of the interesting things in the Bible. I like to say prophecy is this. Prophecy is not God's awareness of the future. Prophecy is God's determination of the future. The book of Revelation doesn't tell us what God thinks is going to happen. The book of Revelation tells us exactly what is going to happen in the future. It spells it out. So it's not God just aware of what's going to take place. It's God saying, this is what's going to take place. So prophecy is not God's awareness of the future. Prophecy is God's determination of the future. And that's what this is a prophetic verse. Called a proto-Genesis here. And it is a powerful foretelling of all that is going to take place. So, as we get into this verse, the textual idea of what I want to get across to you today is simply this. In this verse, God declares his plan to redeem what has been ruined by sin. This is the plan of salvation laid out in one verse of Scripture way back thousands of years ago. Okay? The sermon idea, what I want to try to communicate to you today from this particular text of Scripture, this verse of Scripture, I want to try and get this across to you, is this. From this verse, you can see how God was going to use women to bring about his redemptive plan for humanity. Okay? You with me so far? Really, what's God's view of women? And what we want to say to you today, I always like to say it in a sentence. Here's the message in a sentence. Okay? God values women and has made them a significant part of redemptive history. That's a very important. That is a biblical truth right there. God values women. In fact, I think that the most important thing we do as men in a home is we value women. We value women. The best thing I can do as the husband who's responsible to be the leader and the lover in the home is this. Make sure that I do everything I can to see to it that my wife has the place of preeminence in my home. And when I do that, I'm just glad I did. So my kids should think this. Your mother is the most important person in this home, and I'm going to treat her accordingly. So I will always, and I don't always succeed at this, but I always will treat her with dignity, with respect, and with the honor that is deserved because of the position that she occupies. Guys, if you'll do that, you can have a happy home. That's what leaders do. And that's what it means to be the leader of your home. and your responsibility to lead into love. You set the tone for love in your home. And you set that bar high. And that's it. So let's look at this for a minute, okay? God's promise to redeem Eve is the first part of this. God promises to redeem Eve. That's important because of what took place in the Garden of Eden. Who was it that was tempted? Who was it that picked that fruit first? It was Eve, wasn't it? It was Eve. Satan went to Eve and somehow talked her into saying, God said you shouldn't touch that fruit. He said, the day that you touch it, you will surely die. And Satan said, look, you're not going to die. He wasn't lying. He just wasn't telling the whole truth. Because when she picked that fruit and touched that fruit, she did not die. When they ate that fruit, they did not die physically. They died spiritually. They were still alive physically, but there was something that took place inside of them, and it's called spiritual death. There was instantly a separation from God that occurred. And now because that separation from God occurred, now all of a sudden there was the need for redemption and for the restoration of a relationship that was splintered and broken because of sin. And Eve fell down. If you can, ladies, imagine living in the perfect environment, living in the Garden of Eden. The circumstances and the surroundings are the most beautiful they could ever be. We can't even begin to comprehend what it was like in the Garden of God. Just picture yourself as the one who was tempted and you picked that fruit to bring to your husband. Probably all excited that she was. She went, and most people say, they say it's an apple. We don't know if it was an apple, but it was a piece of fruit. She picked that fruit. She's running to Adam saying, hey, Adam, look what I got. Look. Just picture her excitement. Because what she did, he deceived her. He tricked her. She bought it. Thinking, this is awesome. This is awesome. Adam, let's eat this. Now, he was ignorant. He wasn't tricked. He knew exactly what he was doing. Sin entered into the human race. Eve felt the impact of that sin. Smacked her right between the eyes, knocked her on her feet. Because what happened was, in Eve's case, she was gullible enough to believe a lie. God comes to her and says, Eve, I got you. I got you. I will put enmity between you, Satan, and the woman. I am going to restore what was broken when sin came. And God brought the redemption. And he specifically mentions Eve because he knew what Eve was thinking. God values women. He could have ridiculed her. He could have said to her, what were you thinking? He could have said so many different things to her. He could have just made her feel like the dust of the earth. Instead, he comes to her and he says, I got you, Eve. I got you. I will redeem you. There will come a day. There was at that point in time, there was unity between you and the serpent, and you listened to him and you believed him. And you did what he told you to do. But listen, when I get done with it, there's going to be enmity between you and Satan. I'm going to take care of that. And the promise of redemption is given to Eve at the very beginning. In the book of Genesis, it comes through the woman. Why? Because God values women. God values women. The second aspect of this is this. God's promise to redeem people throughout human history. He says in this, the verse says, I will put enmity between your offspring and her offspring. In other words, there's going to be people born that are sinners, and then what God says is, I'm going to call out a people to myself, even now that you're redeemed, and there's going to be the people of God, and there's going to be the people that oppose God. Welcome to humanity today. Welcome to the world. What you're seeing is that battle played out every day of your life. You read it in the newspaper, you watch it on TV, you see the conflicts. There is tremendous enmity now that exists. But God is saying in this particular verse of Scripture that over the course of time, I am going to call out of the world a people for myself, and there will be enmity between the people of God and the people of the world. And we experience that. I was reading yesterday about Liberty University had their graduation yesterday. I don't know how many of you, it was all over Facebook and some of our friends. And Mike Pence, the vice president of the United States, was a speaker at Liberty yesterday, and he said something that was very interesting. He said to the graduates of Liberty, be prepared for hostility and be prepared for people to ridicule your stance for your faith in the days to come. And he experienced when he simply said this, I don't eat alone, or I don't be alone with another one other than my wife. And then he experienced it because his wife teaching in a Christian school that doesn't permit gay or lesbians in. And so Mike Pence said to the graduating class yesterday, be prepared for hostility in this world. And that's what this is. That's what Jesus said would happen. There will be enmity between Satan's offspring, the people of the world, and the people of God. And it still exists today. That's why sometimes as we go further into our culture, and our culture goes further away from God, it's getting more interesting how to minister to the world. It is changing because it's a changing culture, it's a changing world. Immigration is changing it. The sheer fact the enmity is existent. You see today, even in politics, you see such hatred come out of both sides. The hatred today is, I suppose it's always been there. Maybe it's just that the internet, different sources just put it in our face more than before. But there's enmity. Listen, we're not going to be able to make that enmity go away. Chick-fil-A feels it when the owner states his Christian positions. Chick-fil-A sees it when certain airports around our country say, because of your views as the owner of the company, you can't have Chick-fil-A in the airport here. That's all that is the hostility that exists. But what we need to realize is we can't make Christianity comfortable for the world, and we shouldn't try. The cross is offensive, and we can't try to water down the offense of the cross. We just have to say this, you can be at peace with God because Jesus provided redemption, and He's in the process of calling out a people for Himself. And you can be a part of that if you're not. I think we're living in a day when it's very interesting to live in America because Boko Haram, the group in Africa, destroyed 800 churches in the last month in Africa. Our brothers and sisters in Africa right now are dying in groves. And I don't mean to be unkind, but we're worried about what behind the surface is. You know what I'm saying? We're not certain we can fit Christianity into our schedule. They're worried about being buried with 500 other people in the same grave. We're kind of living in a time where we treat our Christianity nonchalantly when around the rest of the world, they're not. They're paying for it. I read an article yesterday. It was an interesting article. It said this, Christianity is exploding in Iran. You won't hear this on the news, by the way. You won't hear this. Christianity is exploding in Iran. And the article that I read yesterday said this, the reason for the explosion in Iran is this. There's confusion because of what they're seeing in Islam being played out worldwide. But that's not the biggest factor for the explosion of Christianity in Iran. The biggest reason for the explosion of Christianity in Iran is this: the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. And it always has been. But we forget that in America. We forget that. There is hostility. And our willingness, you want to see your church go forward? You want to see your church grow? It takes one thing: sacrifice. You can't build a church without personal sacrifice. It can't happen. And if it does happen, we better question our motives and question our means of how we are building the church. Picks up on these concepts. The last concept is God promises a redeemer through a woman. He says, her offspring shall bruise your head. That's a reference to Christ when he crushes Satan at the cross through the woman. I had to say it with Christ because Christ didn't come through a man, he came through a woman. Set apart in all of human history. The sheer fact that his father was not human was a miraculous thing that the Holy Spirit did. And it's prophesied in the proto-Genesis back there, Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. I'm going to, Eve, your offspring someday will crush the head of that serpent that just deceived you. I promise you. But in doing so, it will bruise his heel. He fell. When Jesus fell on the cross, he fell. That heel being bruised when he paid the ultimate sacrifice necessary to win back the redemption that he would extend to all of us as people. It said this: but when the right time came, God sent his son, born of a what?
Woman.
Think God values women? He really does, subject to the law. Then it says in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 11 makes this observation. It was by faith that even Sarah was able to have a child. Though she was barren, was too old, she believed that God would keep his promises. And he always does. Always does. And then this: it was by faith Rahab, the prostitute, was not destroyed with the people in her city who refused to obey God. Rahab the harlot. It's interesting when you go back and read the genealogies. Rahab the harlot is in the genealogy of Christ. God values women. Isn't that amazing? That's the most offensive right there to people. How could God have a prostitute in his ancestry? Because he promised to redeem this one. 1 Timothy, I think this is one of the fascinating verses in Scripture. It says this: women will be saved through childbearing, assuming they continue to live in faith, love, holiness, and modesty. Interesting word in today's culture, is it not? Should be. It's not always. What's that verse mean? Let me give you a quick analysis, if I can, of what that verse means, because my alarm clock just went off. Satan deceived Eve. He tricked her. He played on her gullibility, and she picked the fruit. Ran with all excitement, having that fruit in her hand, running to Adam, look what I got, look what I got. To being devastated. Not that she picked the fruit, but that she fell for the deception. Paul comes along years and years later when Genesis chapter 3 verse 15 is being played out, and Paul writes to a young man who was in ministry. His name is Timothy, and he says to Timothy, tells him all about the church. And in the book of Timothy, it tells how the church should operate and how the church should be run, all that different stuff, qualifications for this and qualifications for that. And it comes down and tucked in there is this little verse that says this: women will be saved from childbearing. What's it mean? It means this. It means the whole stigma of the deception, the whole stigma that got stuck on women of being gullible and being deceptive, being deceived and being tricked, is removed when women faithfully raise their kids and live the life. The life of faith, love, holiness, and modesty. Those 4 things right there remove any stigma and say, this is a woman of godliness. The salvation is not personal salvation in this verse. Remember, context determines usage. Usage determines meaning. And in this particular sense, the salvation that is referred here is not the salvation of Jesus redeeming a person. It's the salvation of losing. You'll be free from, you'll be released from the stigma of being deceived by sin if you'll faithfully raise your children in faith, in love, in holiness, and in modesty. That's a woman that you look at and say, that's me. I married one. She's not here today, so I can talk about it. No, I try to tell her all the time. I married a woman. That. Her children have risen up before us. And I consider myself blessed to have her in my life as a godly woman. She is a woman of modesty. She is a woman of holiness. She is a woman of love. Her capacity to love far exceeds mine. Every woman's does. A woman's capacity to love far exceeds a man's capacity. And she's a woman of faith. But I also have a mom like that. I get to go home today and sit with a couple of my daughters and a bunch of my grandkids, and I get to enjoy my mom today. She too is a woman of faith, love, holiness, and honesty. And ladies, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you today that what's needed in our culture today is women of faith, women of love, women of holiness, set apart to God, and women of modesty. They don't call attention to themselves. They call attention to others. That's what they do. That right there is how God unfolded redemptive history. A child was born. That's why in every culture, that's beauty of its finest. Get it? That's a tall order, ladies. It's a tall order. But it will be worth it to be. Let's pray. Father, thank you today for your word. You value women. You always have. Pray that here at Grace Church, we too would value women. That they would be honored by us. And I pray that the women that are here today would commit themselves to faith, to love, to holiness, and to modesty. Knowing that the stigma that sin puts on a person's life, they can be totally released from that stigma as they live that life. Help them to be women of God, women of love, women of faith. And with that, we better quit and say,